all set. Get that shit out of here. Leave this on the side. So I'm gonna do a little bit of programming. Might end up what content is there? Samsung look full day of eating. Nothing great on it, to be honest. Let's make this night enjoyable though. Are we live? Are we live? Yes, we are. Okay, good. No, but yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit of programming. Might end up playing one of these bad boys. Gonna try and be more consistent, especially with school incoming. But I gotta figure out a few games, few content for you guys. Might end up doing a Minecraft vid. Might try also a Titanfall, and I be don't wanna try maybe I got a little game. I'd love to actually start doing like a series on there. It's like it's a shallow game, shitty one, but shut the fuck up, you guys. You don't have a word on it. It's actually decent. Pretty fun, pretty fun. It looks like shit though. Might end up buying the second one. Second one's more like quality, but this one's not bad, bro. It's not bad, not bad. Actually enjoyable. Some might end up doing on it, but that's what it became. Now it looks like shit. It's actually more dark before. Now it's more like childish. But yeah, yeah. For now, I gotta watch this bad boy.
2, 1. So
yeah. Beg your pardon.
I is going to be assigned 5 different times to 5 different values, and then the loop is going to run. It's going to run once with 5, once with 4, once with 3, once with 2, and once with 1. And so this block of code we have contracted, say, execute it 5 times with these values of I. I is that iteration variable. I is the thing changing through each iteration of the loop. Okay? And so that's why this prints out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then when it's done, it finishes it. And so this is a much more direct syntax for looping 5 times and setting an iteration variable. You kind of all combine it into this one thing, right? All into one thing. So it's quite nice. So you don't have to be going through a list of numbers. There's all kinds of things that we can iterate through with for. And by the way, while I'm sitting here, I named my variable friends, because that's a list of strings, and friend, which is the iteration variable. I'm using singular and plural because it helps you read it. Python doesn't understand singular and plural. So just because you say friends doesn't mean Python knows it's a list. Python does know it's a list, but it doesn't know by the name of the variable I've chosen. That's your basic mnemonic variable warning. These are cool variable names, but I don't want you to be confused by them. So you can loop through a variable, so we're going to take this list of 3 strings and stick it in friends, and so friend is going to iterate through that. So the first time through, friend is going to be Joseph. Second time through, it's going to be Glenn. Third time through, it's going to be Sally. And so that just says run this loop, run this code, the indented code, 3 times. Each time the variable friend takes on a successive version of a successive value that's in the friends array. So it says happy birthday Joseph, Glenn, Sally, and then we come out of the loop and we print done. So if we try to draw a picture of what this is really doing, the for loop is actually doing a whole bunch of stuff that we would have to do with maybe separate statements in the while loop. First, draw a picture, done. Happy birthday. So if we try to draw a picture of what this is really doing, the for loop is actually doing a whole bunch of stuff that we would have to do with maybe separate statements in the while loop. First, it decides how many times to run the loop, so it's answering the done question, which way do we go? And it is also then moving I ahead. It's managing the iteration variable. If you go back to it's initializing it too. If you go back to the while loop, we had n equals 0, while n greater than 0, n equals n minus 1. So we had like 3 lines to control the loop to manage the iteration variable. But with a for loop, we don't have to do that. And so that's all taken care of. And so that basically says, you know, the for loop, by you using a for loop, are we done? No, we have 5 things to work. Well, set out of the first one, run it. We're not done because we got one more. Set it to the second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, and now we're done. And that is all handled in a single line of code that includes the iteration variable and the set of things through which we are going to iterate through. I really like the word in. It is mathematically, it reminds me of the set theory where you say this is a member of this set, or the for each. Math isn't important here, but if you do know math, the vertical bar means such that, right, is a member of this set, and that kind of stuff, member of this set. I'll erase the math stuff so we don't over math. But it's like, for each of the values in the set 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, run this loop setting the iteration variable I to the members of that set. So in reminds me, for those of us who are math oriented, in reminds me of a really nice concept in mathematics. Okay? Now, you could think of this as sort of this looping structure where the for loop, and this is pretty much how it actually runs inside the computer, right? Where it initializes it, it runs this thing 5 times, and then executes. That's one way to think about it. But you could also think about it in a somewhat more abstract way, and think of it as all we're really doing is we have a contract with Python that says we're supposed to run this code 5 times, and I is supposed to be 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So you could imagine this might be what's going on. The for loop sets I to 5, runs our code. In a somewhat more abstract way, and think of it as all we're really doing is we have a contract with Python that says we're supposed to run this code 5 times, and I is supposed to be 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So you could imagine this might be what's going on. The for loop sets I to 5, runs our code. The for loop sets I to 4, runs our code. The for loop sets I to 3, runs our code. The for loop sets I to 2, runs our code. For loop sets I to 1, and runs our code. All we know is our code was ran 5 times, and by contract, each successive time, we're get a different value for I, and the value for I is taken from this set. And so this is just one way to think about it, to say to yourself, oh yeah, this is one way to think about it as it's actually, and this is how it really works. But this is also kind of logically the contract that Python is making for us. So up next, we're going to talk about taking this notion of doing something to a lot of items, but accomplishing something with that. And I call these loop idioms. So now we're going to talk about loop idioms. And loop idioms are patterns that have to do with how we construct loops. We have the mechanics of fors and whiles, but ultimately we want to get something, mechanics of patterns that have to do with.
Jesus Christ, I don't know what's happening outside, bro. I think there's fireworks, dude. Trying to learn some gritty programming at 10 p.m. I just hear bombs outside, bro. In Canada, bro. Jesus Christ. No, I know Justin Trudeau's not the best president, but Jesus, do some shit, my guy. There's bombs outside, dude. Like, come on, man, come on. Is there anyone watching here? Like, not really. Give a thumbs up to mine though.
With how we construct loops, we have the mechanics of fors and whiles, but ultimately we want to get something done. We want to solve a problem with a loop. And often what we have to do is, if we have a set of things, whether it's lines or strings or characters or numbers, we're looking for something like the largest or the smallest, or we want to add them up or something like that. And so we can't just say add them up. We have to say go through each one and do something to each one and somehow achieve adding them up. And the pattern that we're going to follow is we're going to have this loop that's going to do run once for each thing, right, in some chunk of data. And then, but once for each thing we're going to follow is we're going to have this loop and some add them up. We want to add them up. Character. What we have ultimately loops. We have the mechanics of fors and whiles, but ultimately we want to get something done. We want to solve a problem with a loop. And often what we have to do is, if we have a set of things, whether it's lines or strings or characters or numbers, we're looking for something like the largest or the smallest, or we want to add them up or something like that. And so we can't just say add them up. We have to say go through each one and do something to each one and somehow achieve adding them up. And the pattern that we're going to follow is we're going to have this loop that's going to do one run once for each thing, right, in some chunk. Chunk of data, and then but we're going to set something at the beginning, and then we're going to do something to each one, and at the end we're going to kind of get the payoff. We're going to get the result. So if we're doing sort of summing things, we're going to have a running total, and so this will be like t equals 0, and then this will be t equals t plus the thing value. And then, but this is not the real total, it's the running total during the loop, but at the end it is the real total. And so we're gonna look at what you do at before the loop starts, during the loop, and then what you get after the loop and how you can use that. So we're going to use this loop. It's just going to loop through a set of 6 numbers over and over and over again, right? So we're going to do something before the loop, we're going to do something after the loop, and then we're going to run the loop some number of times. And in this case, thing is our iteration variable because I'm using unmnemonic variables now. So it's going to run 9, 41, 12, 3, 74, and 15. So it's going to run and print these things out. So it runs this loop 6 times, and away we go. Now this loop does nothing except print stuff out. Of course, I like to do that first, is always print things out to make sure that sort of my brain is functioning. So to kind of understand how these loops work, I'm going to ask you to function as a program. And I'm going to show you some numbers in succession, and I want you to mentally figure out what the largest number is, but more importantly, think about how your brain is solving this problem of what is the largest number, given that I'm only going to show them to you one at a time for a little while, and your brain has to do something. And imagine I was going to show you thousands of numbers. I'm not, but imagine I was. How would you organize yourself in a way so that for like an hour and a half, you could sit here as I showed you numbers and you keep track of the largest number that you've seen of all the numbers?
Oh, thank you, sir.
Number is the largest, but that's not the question. How did your brain all the numbers and asked you what's the largest number? Your eyes would have sort of gone, and then you got to 74. And you wouldn't do it in any particular order. Your eyes would just like see the 74 and it would just throw smaller numbers away, and it would move really quickly to what the answer is. Even if there was several hundred numbers on the screen, your mind would sort of move fluidly wherever it felt like moving and then arrive at it. And probably what it would do is it would do something like, you know, kind of move like this, find this, and then sort of check to make sure that it's okay, and then say like, okay, I got 74, I'm done. That's not how computers do it. That is not how computers do it. They do not move fluidly. But they are highly dedicated. They're going to do something. 74. But how would you construct a loop to achieve this? So let's take a look. You could create a variable called largest so far. And this is the largest variable, the value that you've seen in the list so far. Now, I haven't shown you any numbers yet, so we'll just set this to -1 to get us started. So now we see 3. And we're like, oh, that's better than -1. It's our first number, so it's probably the largest we've seen so far, right? Great. 41. Oh, that's bigger than the largest we've seen so far, so we'll keep it. 12 is not bigger than 41, so we're not going to keep it. Notice this keeping thing. 9 is not bigger than 41, so there's no point to keeping it. 74 is bigger than 41, so we'll keep it. Is this the largest number? We don't know. We don't know until we're done. 15, not better than 74. So now we're all done, and hooray, 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 we have the largest number. And we had this variable that we kept, the largest number that we'd seen up to this point. And then when we know that we're done at the end, then that becomes the largest. So if you look at all the numbers, keeping track of the largest so far, at the end of all the numbers, the largest so far and the largest are the same thing. And so that's how you get this idea of something you're doing during the loop is not really the answer, but by the time the loop is done, you will have the answer. And so here's a bit of code that does this. Use it with our numbers, right? So let's take a look. So I have this variable called largest so far. I set it to -1. Before the loop, remember there's a loop before and a loop after and a loop in the middle. Before it's -1. So now the num, remember underscores are okay, that's my iteration variable. If 9 is greater than largest so far, well, largest so far is -1, so that's true, so this code's going to run. So we're going to remember the new number. So this is 9, and so 9 ends up in largest so far, and then we print it out. And so largest so far is 9 after we saw the number 9. Then we do it again. So now 41 comes in. And is 41 greater than 9? The answer is yes, it is. So we're going to run this code, copy 41 into 41 into largest so far, and then print it out. And largest so far is 41 after we saw the number 41. Now we're going to run the loop again with 12. Okay, and you get the idea, I hope. Is 12 greater than 41, which is the largest we've seen so far? And the answer is no, it is not. So we skip. So the largest so far stays 41 even though we saw 12. Meaning we're sort of like ratcheting up, but we never ratchet back down. So we run it again with 3 and 41, and we skip this, and then the largest so far is 41 even though we just saw 3. And now we see 74. Is 74 greater than 41? See, we never are looking at all the numbers. We're only looking at the window on the numbers of the current number that we're looking at. So is 74 greater than 41? The answer is yes. So we run this code and then we capture the 74. So we just saw 74 and it is the largest so far. and then we run it again with 15, but 74 is our largest so far, and so it skips. So 74 remains largest so far after 15, and now we're finished because we just ran the last thing. The for loop takes care of everything and jumps to this print statement and says afterwards, largest so far is 74. But at this point, it's also the largest, right? So largest so far became largest when our loop finished. So that sort of gives you this notion of how we construct, something at the beginning, some kind of thing that we're going to do over and over and over again, and then something at the end. And we put some print statements in just so we can watch it and see what's going on. So coming up next, we're going to talk about some more loop patterns, some counting, totaling, averaging, and finding the smallest number. So now we're going to look at some more patterns of the different things we can do at the top of the loop, in the middle of the loop, and at the bottom of the loop. And the first one we're going to do is counting. Now we're going to take a look at the number of something, the number of things in our list. Now we could just inspect it and see 6, but you will have for loops like you're reading through a file or scanning through some data. And so the notion of counting, you have to assume that you don't really know, that there's going to be a lot more than just 6. But for now, we're just going to do 6, and we're going to count how many things that we see in this loop. And the pattern is simple. You set a variable, Zork, to 0 at the beginning. We often call this variable count in mnemonic. And now we're going to run this loop 6 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And each time through, we're just going to add 1 to Zork. So Zork starts at 0, then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to print it out. So, we see the 9, and Zork is 1. See 41, Zork is 2. And Zork is 16. When we see the 15, 4 stops, and we print out afterwards. And this then is 6 is then the ultimate count that we got. So that's very, very simple. The pattern is that set it to 0 at the beginning, add 1 to it, and if you run that enough times, then this is how many times that happened. And in a sense, it's how many times this line ran, right? Sometimes you put this in an if statement, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Oops. Now, we can do the same thing to get a total. And the way the total works is you compute a running total of the number of the items that you've seen so far, and at the end, the running total, in effect, becomes the total. A better variable name for this would be like sum or total or something, but Zork, I'll use Zork again. So you set Zork to 0, and it starts out, the total we've seen so far is indeed 0. And then we're going to run this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and thing is going to be the iteration variable. It's going to take on the successive values. And each time through, we're just going to take our running total and add to it the thing we've seen. So we see 9, and the running total is 9. We see 41, and the running total becomes 50. We see 12, the running total becomes 62. We get a 3, it becomes 65. We get 74, running total is 139. How many more are we going to see? We don't know. Could be a million. Could be 1. Oh, it's only 1. We get a 15. Our running total is 154. And what's true at any moment here is the running total is right up of what we've seen so far. Now, when we're done, the for loop quits for us, and afterwards, 154 is indeed the total. So the running total while we're in the loop, at the end of the loop, after the end of the loop, we have the actual total. So it's not very difficult to convert this to the average because we've calculated the count and we've calculated the running total, and now we're going to have the average by simply dividing those. Okay, so now this time I've used mnemonic variables. Don't get confused by this. Mnemonic variables are just friendly names I chose for you to read the code easier. I am not communicating to Python in any way by naming this count and sum, but count and sum is nice. Okay, so I set count to 0 and sum to 0. Oh, go back up. I set count to 0 and sum to 0 at the beginning, and the count is 0 and the sum is 0. And then I'm going to run this loop 6 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and each time value is the iteration variable. I count, every time I run the loop, I count equals count plus 1, sum equals sum plus value, so I have a running count and a running total, and they show up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the running total. And then at some point, the for loop, we do the last one, and the for loop jumps out, and it divides 6, 154 is the count and running total, and then it divides the average sum over count. Okay? So that's just, again, a pattern of something in the beginning, something in the middle, something in the end. Another kind of thing we something in the end. Another kind of thing we something in the end. Another kind of thing we tend to do in loops is we look for things, we hunt for things. And so this is where we have an if statement inside of a loop. And of course I've created a silly simple thing. In this code I am looking for large values that are greater than 20. And again, don't think of this as just 6 numbers, but I'm looking for all the values and I'm going to print them out. So, you know, it says before, it's going to run this 9. Well, if 9 is greater than 20, it's false, so it goes back up. 41, true, so it prints out 41, then goes back up. 12, false, goes back up. 3, false, goes back up. 74, true, so it runs this, so out comes that little print statement. Goes back up, and then 15 is the last one, and that's false. It goes back up, and the 4 says, we're done, and then we do afterwards. And so this is just the notion of having an if statement inside of a for loop, where we're sort of picking or choosing or selecting or looking for something in a large set of things that we're looping through. We can also say, I want to know if a particular value is there. And so we're going to use a Boolean variable. We've talked about integer variables like 1, 42, and then floating point variables like 98.6, and then string variables like hello world that have quotes in them. This is a fourth type, a kind of variable. It's called a Boolean variable, and it only has 2 values. It has true and false. Matter of fact, these if statements, they return Boolean values. Value equal 3, that is returning a true or a false based on the value of value. There's a mnemonic confusion there.
Okay.
right? But I'm using it. So I'm going to make a variable called found, and that's a decent name for a variable, so don't get hung up on that. And I'm going to initially say found is going to indicate to me whether or not I found a 3 in my list. And I'm going to start before the loop starts, say false, because we haven't found anything yet. So found equals false. And so at the beginning of the loop, found is false. Before the loop starts, found is false. And now we're going to run this loop a bunch of times. 9, is that true? No, skip. 41, is that true? Skip. 12, skip. Right? So 9, 41, 12. And found has remained false because we haven't done anything to it. But now in comes a 3. And this becomes true. So it runs this code. So found becomes true. And then we print it. And you'll notice that when we see a 3, we get true. And then it runs again. We get 74. It's still false. 15. It's still false. Run, 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 quit. And the residual afterwards is true. And in fact, if you didn't know any of this and you don't print that out, all you know is that afterwards we loop through all those things and we know that there was a 3 in there. That's what we're doing. So we searched all of them. We checked for 3s when we found a 3. And you can see basically that, you know, the found remains false until it flips to true, but then there's nothing to set it back to false. There's nothing in this loop that's going to set it back to false. So once it sort of catches the 3, then it remains true for the rest of the loop, and then it just finds its way out. Now, if you want to think about it for a moment, ask yourself, how might we make this loop more efficient by putting a statement right in here? Think about a way to, once you've found it and it's true, there is sort of no reason to keep on going. So what would you put there?
What would I put there? I put phi is equal 3, found is equal to true. And break, right?
To perhaps make this loop to look for 3s, just to tell you whether or not there was at least one 3 in there, how to make that more efficient. Just think about that. Okay, so now let's look back at the largest value that we started out with, right?
Is it break?
And so if you...
I gotta try. Piece of shit, can't give the answer. Fucking monkey. Do your job. Get back to the kitchen. Okay, but I think it's break.
If you think about this, let's kind of give it a sort of a rough look here. Largest so far is our kind of like a running total, but it's our hypothesis is the best large number. And we have this if statement that says if the number we just see right now is greater than the largest so far, then capture it, right? Take whatever number we saw and capture it. So when we see 9, it's better, we capture it. We see a 41, it's better, we capture it. We don't capture this, we don't capture this, we capture the 74, and we don't capture the 15, and that's how we do it. So you could think of this as better. When the number we're looking at is greater than our working hypothesis of the largest, we grab it because it's better. So this line right here is the grab line. Grab it. Okay? So then the question is, how would you modify this code to teach it to find the smallest value in this list of numbers? Think of it as you have a starting number, you have a sort of what's better in this grabbing notion. How could you do that? Take a look. Okay, so let's take a look. So let's do a couple things. Like if you look at this if statement, that's better. Well, it's better now if the number is less than. So but then we should probably change this to be smallest so far, 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 right? Matter of fact, that's what this is. We've changed the word largest so far to smallest so far, and we've changed the greater than to a less than. Is that going to fix it? I'll give you a second to look at it. Pause if you need. Is that going to fix it? Is that going to find our smallest number? The answer is, of course, no, it's not. So if we run this code, so we set the smallest so far to -1, and it starts out -1. We run it, and it's 9. Is 9 less than -1? No, it's not. So after we see a 9, the smallest so far is -1. Now we're going to run 41. Is 41 less than -1? No, it is not. So the smallest so far is still -1. As a matter of fact, it isn't the smallest so far anymore. Just because we named it smallest so far doesn't mean it is the smallest so far. It didn't work out so well. And so you see that none of these, because they're never less than -1, do anything. And we claim that afterwards the smallest we've seen so far is -1. And that is because, of course, -1 is smaller than any of the numbers that we saw. So how could we fix this? Well, if we started the smallest so far with some like arbitrary big number, then it'd be better. So if we made this 100, whoops, come back. If we made this be like 100, that'd be good, because the first time through, the 9 would be less than 100, so we would capture the 9, and then the rest of the loop would work just fine. But then what if we didn't know that how big these numbers were? As a matter of fact, the largest so far wouldn't have worked if all the numbers were negative. Think about that. We just assumed they were positive, and so we kind of wrote lazy code that assumed all numbers were positive. That might not be a good assumption depending on the numbers that you're dealing with, right? So maybe 100 is a good number to start with, or maybe like 1,000 or 10,000, or like some number with lots of zeros in it. How big should we make this? And the answer is we're kind of solving this problem the wrong way. And the thing we really want to do to solve the problem is to just accept the fact that if we're looking for the smallest number so far, that the right hypothesis is the first number. And if we just knew what that first number was, the 9, because it's the first number, we know that it's both the largest so far and the smallest so far as soon as you see the first number. But we don't know here before the loop starts what that first number is. I mean, you can look at it, but assume this is just data that's coming from somewhere else, and we don't know it until we start reading it. So we have to construct a loop that deals with the fact that we want to capture the first value as our hypothesis for smallest so far. So how do we do that? Let's take a look. So what we do is we use yet another type. So we have integer, floating point, string, Boolean, and now we have a thing called the none type. None type.
Okay, buddy.
is a special marker in that it only has one value. Boolean has true and false. You know, floating point has an infinite number of values, and integer has an infinite number of values, but none type has one value, none. None is a constant. Capital none is a constant. The difference is we can check to see if we have stored none. None is often used to indicate emptiness, not non-existence, because smallest doesn't exist until we assign it, but we're going to assign it to like a mark, a flag, a marker, some way to say, oh, this is not even a number, it's nothing. And so we're going to, and you can do this. So that's like makes a variable called smallest, and in it puts none. It sticks it right in. It's not a string none, it's like a special type. Okay? So that actually captures the notion that before the loop starts, the smallest number that we've seen so far is none. We haven't seen any numbers. Okay? So then we come in and we have an if statement. And we have a new operator called is. Is stronger than equal sign. And so if smallest is none, that becomes true. It runs this case. And so then what it does is it copies this first value, which is 9, into smallest. And so we see a 9, and the smallest so far is 9, which is the first value. And again, we're assuming we don't know what the first value is before the loop starts, so we use the first iteration through the loop as the moment where we capture that. Okay? So, smallest is the value, and then we print it, and we go back up, and now it runs again with 41. 41 is not none. None is, there's only one thing that's none, so it is not equal to none. Smallest is not equal to none, or is not none. So this is false, so it skips over here. Then it asks the question, is the value we're looking at, 41, less than smallest? Well, smallest is 9 in this case, and this is 41, so that's false, so it skips that and goes on. So we see 41, we don't take it, and then you can see that this will never become true again. This is pretty much false for the rest of the iterations of the loop. That's false for the rest. rest of the iterations for the loop. So it just is going to run down here and ask this question. And at some point we see a 3 and we run this code, we capture it. We see 74, we don't capture it. We see 15, we don't capture it. So then the for loop skips out. At the end, we have the smallest. And actually, this would be a good technique for the largest as well, because it really is just a technique to put a marker in this variable so that we snag that first number or first whatever as we read and parse through them. So the is and is not operators are very useful in Python. You can think of them as like the double equal sign. They're asking a question, and they're asking a question and they return a true or, blank is blank, returns a true or a false. It is stronger. Double equal says, are these things equal in type and value? So just as an example, if I were to say, is 0 equal to 0.0, it would say, yeah, that's true. But then if I says 0 is 0.0, that would be false. So that's because these two are the same value-wise, and these two are not the same type-wise. So is stronger than equals, meaning that it demands equality in both the type of the variable and the value of the variable, and no conversion is done. And so that's just a very strong. Don't overuse is. If you're dealing with numbers or even strings, use double equals, don't use is, because sometimes it gets a little confusing. So use is sparingly. I tend to only use is on Booleans. And on none types. I don't use is on integers, and I don't use is on floats, and I don't use is on strings. Just none or true false. And also is not is also an operator. So you just say blah 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 is not none, or blah 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 is not false. Okay, so we've been looping around and doing loops and loops of loops. We looked at the indefinite loops, the while loops that kind of run for a while, the definite loop, and we looked at break and continue as a way to either escape completely from the loop or go back up and discard the current iteration of the loop. We looked at none. We looked at Boolean variables with for loops, definite loops, where you've got some kind of a set or a list or some kind of sequence that you're looping through. And then the concept of loop idioms, where you do something at the top, something to each item, and then you sort of get a benefit at the bottom. And so that gets us through iterations. Hello and welcome to Chapter 6. In this chapter we're going to talk about strings. And Chapter 7 is the payoff chapter, so up to this point we're still learning sort of basic building blocks, and actually we're going to write a real program in Chapter 7. So just learn this, and the payoff's in Chapter 7.
Let's go.
So we actually been using strings from the very first lecture, because if you print hello world, well, that's a string. And so we've been doing things that...
Jesus Christ, what the fuck is this?
This
Okay, let's end it here. I'm gonna go make me some eat, make me some make me some eat. Jesus Christ, bro. Fucked. Dodge, you fucking monkey.
This slide here is all review. We use plus to concatenate strings. We use print to print them out. Print's just a function. It takes as a parameter something, strings, integers, etc. We can put digits in strings, but we can't add to them. By now you figured this out, but you can use things like ints to convert the strings to integers and then print things out. So, we've been doing this for a while. We've been talking about strings all along. Now today, what we're going to do is going to just get into strings in more detail. We input data with the input function. Input returns us a string. And if we want to input a number, we have to run some kind of conversion, like we have to do an int before we take this data that we read from input, And so there's things that we've got to do, and we've been doing all these things in programs so far. But if we look in a little more detail inside strings, we can index within strings each character. So each character has a separate position and a separate index. And they basically, the letters have positions, and the positions start at 0. And the best way I explain this to remember this is it's the elevators, as we used in one of our examples a long time ago. Elevators in Europe start at 0, and so strings start at 0 as well. Turns out in the old days there's some efficiency with the notion of of lists of things starting with 0. These days the efficiency isn't the issue, but there's a certain elegance starting at 0, even though intellectually you might think 1 would be the first character in the string. Might make most sense to be sub 1, but it's not, it's sub 0. But just remember that. And so we have this operator called the index operator, and it's square brackets. So, you know, fruit is a variable that contains the string banana, and then fruit sub 1 is the character that's in position 1. Now that actually is the second character. I'll keep reminding you until I get tired of reminding you. And so that assigns A, the letter A, into, the letter A into the variable letter. Of course, that's a badly chosen. It's either a well-chosen variable name or a badly chosen variable name. And the thing that goes inside this can either be a constant or it can be an expression. So this is x equals 3, and then fruit sub x minus 1, well, that means 2, which is position 2, which is an n, and so that gives us an n. So the index is an operator, and you can add this bracket syntax to the end of a string variable. You can't index beyond the length of the string, so if I say zot sub 5, well, there's only 3 characters, which means 0, 1, 2, but sub 5 doesn't work, and of course we get a happy little trace back. So you have to be careful when you're starting to pull stuff out of strings. Although some of the things allow it, some of them don't, and then you'll kind of get used to that. We can ask how long a string is, and so we use the len function. We pass the string variable, and we pass it into len as parameter, and len gives us back the length of the string, not the position. So it's 0 through len minus 1. So it's 0 through length minus 1. So length is just another function that we've been doing function 1. Len minus minus 1. So it's 0 through length minus 1. So length is just another. Another function that we've been doing functions now for a while. You pass in a parameter, and then len does some work, and out comes 6, and that goes back into x because the function has a residual value. It just happens to be a built-in function. And so, you know, somewhere deep inside Python there is code that takes this, and somebody wrote a loop or looked something up and then returned a return value and sent back a 6 to go into our x variable. And so a function is there, and like I said, we've been using this for a while. Another thing we tend to do is to look through strings and look at strings and dig data out of strings. Python is excellent for doing sort of these kinds of lookups. And so we can write a simple loop. We can write a for loop that creates some kind of a iteration variable like index. And given that we know that these positions are 0 through 5, we can set this to be 0. And then write a while loop while the iteration variable is less than the length of fruit. And remember, this is 6, so it's going to be 0 through 5. 0 through 5 are the values we want to generate. And then we can look up one at a time, pull out fruit sub index, so fruit sub 0, fruit sub 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then print out the position and the letter index, and then add 1 to index, and it runs. This will run 6 times, 0 through 5, and out we go to produce this output right here. And so that's one way of looping through strings. That is a basic indeterminate loop, but we construct carefully an iteration value, and work our way through that loop data. The other way is to use a determinate loop, a for loop. And generally when we are able to use a while loop or a for loop, all else being equal, we generally prefer a for loop. And so here we have the for keyword and fruit, and it's an in, and so for letter in fruit, well, that just says letter is our iteration variable, and it's going to take on the successive values of each of the characters. So this loop is going to run 6 times, and letter is going to be B-A-N-A-N-A, banana. I'm always terrified when I make these slides that I'm going to misspell banana, because somehow I always think that there are 2 N's somewhere. I don't know. It's not one of my favorite words to spell. I actually didn't choose banana as the constant. The author who I borrowed the textbook from, Alan Downey and Jeff Elkner, they used banana, and so I'm still using banana. So some of the jokes in the book aren't my jokes. They are the jokes of Jeff and Alan. So here are just 2 equivalent, you know, so you can have the while loop. They sort of both do the same thing. They both just print the letters out one time through. Each of these loops runs 5 times. But you can see how the determinate loop, the for loop, is a prettier loop, unless you truly somehow need to know this number as you're going through the loop. But if all you're doing is going through and you want to touch in order each of the characters of the string, you then simply write a for loop because it's more elegant. The less code you write, the less chance there is for you to make a mistake. And so the fact that these are equivalent, this is 2 lines of a loop, and this is 4 lines of a loop. That's twice as many places as you could make a mistake, because you might, you know, misspell index or something. I mean, why even make an iteration variable if you don't need to make an iteration variable? And so we can do things that harken back to our iterations and loops chapter, where anything that you can do in those things, like look for the largest letter, look for the smallest letter, search to see if a letter exists, or say count the number of A's in the word banana. And so that's what this is doing. And so we we have a counter. So again, we do something at the top of the loop, we're going to do something in the middle loop, and then we're going to print it out at the bottom. So we start our counter at 0, we're going to loop through all the letters, And then if the letter is A, then count equals count plus 1. This is kind of a pattern in a loop where we're noticing something, and instead of like we did it earlier where we said found equals true, well, we're going to count them this time. So if we have 1, we'll get 1. If we have 0, we get 0. And how many ever there are, but there should be 3 because it's going to run 3 times, and there's 3 A's in banana. And so this is a conditional within count. We've seen counts, we've seen conditionals in loop in prior chapters. And so again, I love the in keyword in Python. It again reminds me of set notation in algebra. If you're a math whiz, if you're not, don't worry about it. Or maybe you will be a math whiz and you'll say, "Whoa, this set notation reminds me a lot of the in keyword in Python." So again, it's for iteration variable letter. Again, don't get stuck with letter. I just happen to be using it here in banana, and that is for each character in the string banana. Run this loop once, changing the variable letter to be the particular character that we're pointing at. And so it's taking care, for is taking care of a lot for us, right? And so this is sort of this really smart for loop. The for loop is, both deciding how many times to run the loop, in this case 6, and it's advancing the letter. So advance, print. Decide whether you're done, 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 advance, print. Decide whether you're done. I am now done because we're done with that particular string. And so you can think of the for as, magically doing all of this for you, of both deciding how long to run the loop, when you're done or not, and moving down through all the successive letters in the loop. So up next, we'll talk a little bit about additional things that we can do with strings.
Okay, I think it's actually enough for today. That's a long ass vid, bro. But he is starting to, do some shit. That's good. Very nice. Okay. Oh. Slicing strings. Very nice. 4 seconds before. Nice. Bro, great. Hello?
Ah,
Hello.
come.
Yo.
Qu'est-ce que tu stream?
Some epic
You stream,
content.
man.
Some epic content. Aïe aïe aïe, bro. Mes yeux ils brûlent, tabarnak.
Quoi?
Ah?
Mes yeux ils brûlent. Oh, fais-le.
Yo, Khaled, pourquoi t'es venu en même temps qu'Akram? What the fuck? Yo, that's sassy.
Sassy guys.
Aïe.
C'était comment Metallica crème?
Ben, j'ai reconnu 3 musiques.
Je suis fire, am I right?
3
C'est
musiques
combien?
sur 2 heures.
C'était 2 heures.
Ah, t'es
Yeah.
debout? T'es où, man?
Non,
Bon,
j'étais pas
c'était
debout.
sièges assis.
Yeah, mais c'était
Non,
tu sais.
il était pas dans le mosh pit, bro.
Non, vraiment, je fais. Yo, ils se battaient en bas, man, avec du
Ah ouais?
cannabis and shit. Dude, Jesus. Et là, je sais pas pourquoi, man. Metallica, ils ont genre. Il restait genre 30 minutes au show. Ils ont drop des
Yeah.
balloons. Je sais pas pourquoi des fucking
Damn.
balloons. Oh, bro.
C'est cute.
C'était au Centre Bell, il y avait le truc de Maurice Richard and shit.
Oh, c'est olympique.
Ah.
T'es allé aussi, Khaled?
T'inquiète, bro.
Regarde aussi, t'es
On
allé pour
va
là?
bien.
J'ai acheté un petit chute à 60$, bro. Leur eau, elle coûte 5,50$ la bouteille. Puis il est
Khaled a
même
acheté
pas
un
de
shirt à
robinet.
60$.
Non, j'ai
C'est
acheté.
drôle, toi.
Khaled a acheté un chute à 60$, bro. C'est le prix de sa bouffe de la semaine.
Mais Khaled, est-ce que t'as entendu les feux d'artifice?
Yeah,
Il y
je
a
les ai
des.
vus.
Qu'est-ce
Mais
qu'il y a?
pourquoi? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Hein?
Aucune idée, mais c'est à son tour.
T'es malade mental, dude, I swear to God. Aïe aïe aïe. Dude, ma
Mais
soeur.
t'as installé Windows.
Yeah,
Comment t'as fait?
with Bootcamp. Mais genre, la moitié du hard drive c'est Windows.
Oh, sur le Mac?
Yeah.
Damn! C'est si
C'était
Mathieu réussi,
long.
il peut actually game sur son shit.
Bro, non. Non.
Regarde, ouais, man.
Ok, quoi, genre?
Valorant.
Roblox.
Yeah, Roblox, si tu mets genre le resolution au max, ça commence à lag.
Yeah, mais c'est parce que c'est sur Linux.
Tu m'entends in-game, Khaled?
Quoi?
Tu m'entends in-game?
Euh, non.
Ok.
Ah,
Parce que
attends, maybe, maybe.
mon shit il
maybe.
s'allume, so. Je sais pas.
Parle ça.
Man, j'ai goût de me...
What?
Comment t'es juste à 10 kills, bro?
Bro, ton volume il est low. In-game, il est. Ça marche.
In-game yellow ou sur Discord?
Non, in-game, in-game. Mais il
Ah.
est low.
Ok, ben j'allais juste le désactiver.
Bro, est-ce que t'as vu Revenant quand il est devenu OP?
Bro, j'ai pas joué.
Aïe aïe aïe.
Je peux avoir un stream?
Khaled, je fume.
Non, c'est Hasif.
Quoi?
C'est Hasif.
Bro, t'as un multi-$1,000
Yeah,
PC.
mais. Maté, le problème il est pas là. Le problème il est.
Vous faites du
Le
casual?
resolution est trop high. Yeah, yeah.
Boring.
Bro,
Imagine
c'est
being
sweaty.
casual
Non,
and
non, non.
boring.
Son. La moitié
C'est
du
sur ça
lobby
c'est
des
boring,
masters.
bro. Ok, premièrement, tu joues à minuit. À minuit, il y a juste les charts. Puis les autres, tu joues à casual. Like, t'es comme... T'es dans le pire. Like, tu vas aller contre des Grandmasters. Like,
Yeah.
like,
La moitié du lobby c'est des masters,
oh,
bro.
legit, je trouve que
C'est juste du purple smoke.
Overwatch, c'est plus fun que Apex, non?
Non.
Non,
Non.
guys. Pas c'est nul sur ça.
C'est plus facile d'être bon en Overwatch que Apex, bro.
Ouais, c'est juste du spam Overwatch.
Yeah.
En fait, ça dépend. Ah, je sais pas. Les meilleurs de Apex sont-ils meilleurs que les meilleurs de Overwatch?
Yeah.
Oui.
Il va y avoir des pro Apex.
Ah,
Mec, les
Ah,
pro
voilà.
Apex, tu les compares à rien. Ils vont juste booster.
non. Parce que la moitié des pro Apex, c'est des genres manettes. Même plus. Le trois quarts.
Yeah, Overwatch aussi.
Non, Overwatch, il y a plus de manette, man. Il y a zéro manette, il y a
Yeah,
aucun
ouais.
pro manette d'Overwatch. Zéro. Comme zéro, man.
Oui, good question, là.
Tandis qu'Apex, trois quarts, c'est des manettes il y a juste des gens qui jouaient PC au début, puis ils ont switch à manette avant que c'est OP manette.
C'est une
Parce-
nouvelle map.
Le
Fuck.
problème avec
Demandez, il y a
Apex,
genre
c'est
5
high
maps, bro.
movement. C'est high movement, so ça requiert du fucking hard aim à track. Puis là, les gens qui aim assist, c'est juste OP, genre. Comme, tu peux juste track comme une bitch.
Yo, Maté, t'as pas vu le movement, hein? Le crazy. Hein.
C'est quoi le movement? Ils ont changé le movement?
Non, non,
Super
non,
glide.
non. Le monde, I mean, les masters, comment ils bougent.
Ah. Non, j'ai vu.
Non, 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 t'as pas vu. Tu t'es jamais mangé le joueur devant ta gueule.
Calais, bro, juste
Ah,
check
Khaled,
mon rank.
Khaled, t'es allé contre le gars, comment il s'appelle, là?
Xylus,
Allé
bro.
contre?
Le contrat similaire.
Si, là. T'as combien de stones? Tu joues toujours à Dokkan, Akram?
J'allais me get de la bouffe, mais je suis à 280, man.
Il donne fucking de stones,
Yeah,
hein?
je suis en train de save pour le Worldwide. C'est-tu en octobre
Yeah, c'est
ou...
bientôt. Mais j'ai use 200 sur le
Oh,
Oh,
Kel.
ils ont neuf genre tellement de trucs,
T'as
mais
use
Maté, c'est
kill?
insane.
Non, parce que je voulais pas Kel, mais toutes ces featured units, j'en ai aucun. Man.
Ouais, mais...
Comme le
Dude,
Kid Goku, il est vraiment fort. Puis je les get.
on sait même
Deux en
pas c'est
plus.
quoi le Worldwide, bro. Ça pourrait
Yeah,
être
mais
genre
dude,
un
j'ai
boosty.
500 stones, bro.
Ah,
570.
ok.
Maté,
What the
Ok.
fuck, bro?
Maté.
Actually,
T'as
tu montes?
save?
Oui!
Oh shit, y'a du
Là, j'ai
monde.
save. J'ai juste. Depuis qu'on a Summon, j'ai arrêté. Puis j'ai.
Mais tu fais quoi sur le toit,
Come
bro?
on,
Mais j'ai
bro.
dépensé comme
Mec,
200 aussi dans le LR Banner avant.
Le Goku et Gohan?
J'ai pas eu Goku, mais j'ai eu fucking de LR.
T'as-tu
Oh
get le
my god.
Gohan ou t'as juste fait le Goku?
J'ai juste fait le Goku. Le
non,
Gohan
non,
est
non.
trash.
Ouais, le Gohan il est trash.
Mais dans mes tickets, mes tickets c'était les
Ah,
summons les plus
il est
OP.
Yo,
cracked.
yo.
Attends, j'ai
Il est cracked, il est
les
cracked.
77?
Non, les tickets pour. Tu sais, les tickets.
Ah,
Bro, je les use sur
Oh
truc
my
à l'art,
god,
j'ai get
bro.
tellement que de
yeah,
characters.
non, moi j'ai rien get.
Maté, ce jeu est
Mais
insane, bro.
les
Wallah.
77, bro, j'ai get
Oh, ça
le.
c'était trash.
T'as
Pour
c'était
moi, c'était
trash?
trash. Ouais.
Mais j'ai get deux new LRs, bro. C'est ça
J'ai
qui
get un
me.
new, ouais, j'ai get un new LR, mais il est trash.
T'as get
Ouais.
lequel?
Le Kid Goku puis Krillin LR EGL. Là. Tu sais même pas c'est lequel, t'as que c'est
C'est
trash.
pas Goku, c'est Gohan, puis je
Ouais,
l'ai.
Gohan. Toi, c'est
Je l'ai.
ça?
Non, mais c'est pas lui que j'ai get. J'ai get le LR Vegeta and Goku, le Int, là, du même. C'était genre un Celebration banner. Genre, c'est du Planet Namek Saga. Mais
EGL ou Int?
Int, où est-ce que Vegeta il switch avec Goku de ce Planet Namek?
Oh, spoilers.
C'est lequel je parle?
Les dice.
Ok,
Attends, ça va
Maté.
passer. Attends, je suis en train de penser. T'es sûr que c'est un Int?
Yeah, c'est un
Oh,
Extreme
oui,
Int.
je sais pas tu penses. C'est un revival, non?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mais dude,
Non, je sais pas.
il link mal, il link fucking mal avec tout, man. Mais c'était quand même sick, you know?
Non, mais je te jure, les deux persos Anniversary sont tellement comme pas. Sont tellement underwhelming, genre. Ils sont tellement trash, man. Like, je sais pas comment dire. Ils sont like,
Yeah,
tu sais, quand Tech, ceux d'avant, le 7th Anniversary,
yeah, celui-là, ils étaient
quand eux
chauds.
ils ont sorti, c'était OP,
Yeah,
man.
non,
Ils
c'était
ils
sick.
sont fait, mais
Celui-là,
eux sont
c'était pas
trash.
great. Non,
Ils
mais
sont trash. Je meurs toujours, bro. Genre, tu sais, le hardest event dans le jeu, c'est.
toi aussi, tu meurs, bro. Moi, je crois que c'est juste moi,
Non,
je sais pas le use, mais il est
non.
pas si
Tu sais, le
great que ça,
hardest event
hein.
dans le jeu,
Lequel? Le Cellmax?
Damn.
Shenron. Non, c'est
C'est
Shenron.
devenu Shenron, les dragons and shit.
Yeah, le 7. Bro,
Le
je l'ai
s-
battu sans aucun des deux.
Fuck. Oh, t'as
Like, je
les
te sais
deux,
pas.
Chris.
Yeah, j'ai
Avec
les deux, mais.
l'autre.
Attends, t'as
T'inquiète,
Oh,
lequel?
supply ship.
j'ai juste le GT. Toi, t'inquiète le
Yeah,
physical.
oui.
Tu m'as même pas dit, sale bitch.
Oui, je t'ai dit! Check les DMs!
What?
Bro, je t'ai legit
Hey,
send
yo.
un screenshot, bro.
Haché? Wait. Non, tu. Oui, où ça, bro?
Oui, check, je t'ai
Dans
send!
General?
Non, dans Instagram!
Ah, Chris, bro. Je regarde pas mes Insta DMs, man. Fuck. Ah, ben oui.
J'ai send un collage, en plus, c'est un beau collage, t'en envoies deux, ça va bien comme en angle, là.
Ah, fuck you. Fuck, man. Non, moi, non, mais, yeah. Je sais pas,
Non,
man.
mais le GT est 1000 fois meilleur, je te dis, il est 1000 fois meilleur,
Y'a
GT.
quelqu'un?
Anyways, bro, genre, je sais pas comment les groupes.
Yo, fais
Puis
pas le
c'est
fou, bro,
incomparable à
inside, tu vises pas
Piccolo, moi.
inside.
Moi, je veux vraiment le
Ça fait
Donc,
Piccolo,
le
peur.
dude.
Piccolo, il est OP. Le
C'est ça,
Piccolo,
man.
comme, il est invincible.
Genre,
Il
je
c'est
veux
le
le
best.
Piccolo,
C'est comme
dude.
le
Je te
Genre,
jure.
shit.
je l'ai pas, moi.
Achète-le!
Ah,
Mais il est
ok.
genre.
Mais il est pas dans le store, il est juste
va au
pas là.
bunker,
Je suis
on
en
va au
train de
bunker.
wait.
En shop avant.
Hein?
Ouais,
au
il
bunker.
l'avait mis, puis là, j'avais hésité, je sais pas pourquoi,
Check,
bro.
Hardest Event dans le jeu, j'ai même pas use les fucking
19,
anniversary, man.
Ah, shit.
Check sur Discord.
Man, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Non, mais Piccolo, il est insane. Genre, il est
Toi,
Ils
t'as
sont là,
insane.
le
ils sont là, ils
int,
sont là.
vu que Vegeta et Trunks, toi, t'es posé, man.
I'd bet.
Ah, mais je t'ai pas dit,
Tu push.
l'autre
Yeah,
alert
yeah.
que j'ai get. Attends, les alerts que j'ai get dans les tickets, c'était le int Vegeta.
Oh,
J'ai get le Esther Goku,
attention,
lui qui fait
Mathéo,
fucking mal, mais sa défense c'est de la merde.
derrière, on se fait sandwich,
Oh,
sandwich.
le LR.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Lui,
Dangerous,
lui, il
dangerous.
est... je sais pas,
Ils sont
est
juste
vraiment
là,
pas- Il fait mal,
just
man.
bouge,
Sa
bouge.
défense,
T'as fait les
c'est pas
easier?
Laisse les loba.
Le easy du STR.
Juste regarde derrière.
Non, les easy, tous les nouveaux easy, t'es fait?
Ouais, de Vegito et tout. Bro,
Yeah.
Vegito
Mais
puis
tu là, il est
Vegeta.
OP, bro.
Non, man.
Bro. Yo,
Alors,
il est OP.
je le use mal, mais il est juste... il
Bro,
est
check
pas-
ma team. Hardest Event dans le jeu, check ma team.
Alors, c'est à cause que j'ai pas Piccolo, man. Parce que Chris...
Dude, ils sont insane, man. Le
Tu
Vegito,
fais quoi?
Nick.
Attends,
Ah,
s'il
non,
sort en
Il fait du 2 millions, 2 millions, 2 millions à tout le monde, man.
Est-ce que j'ai le
Yeah.
même ult?
Et juste
Hein?
2 millions, tu vois.
Yeah, mais
J'ai
il
le
a
même
additional, puis
ult.
il fait 2 millions encore, il a
C'est quoi le
additional, il
même
fait 2
ult?
millions encore.
Est-ce que c'est le même ult
stack, man.
qu'avant?
Ok.
Non.
Non, mais le
C'est un
Piccolo,
shield.
bro, si tu dois le get.
Ah.
Fait que je sais pas pourquoi tu l'as
Ça,
pas
c'est
acheté,
le
bro.
Piccolo qui me
Je t'ai dit de l'acheter depuis qu'il est sorti, bro.
Ah,
Le
je me
shield
suis
est
rendu
boosté, bro.
compte.
Même à l'école, je suis comme,
Ok.
bro, achète-le, trust.
C'est un shield on
Je
a
me
shield,
suis
tu
dit
vois.
c'était
Peut-être.
juste un wave.
Et
Et
c'est
Bro,
là,
il-
là,
sur moi ou je le
là,
place à
je mets
terre?
beaucoup sur le worldwide,
Hein,
bro.
sur toi,
Je
sur
Pourquoi
pense.
il est OP, bro? Hide, son defense est insane.
Ok, mais je
C'est
l'active
ça,
puis on
Son
yeah.
push.
damage, il est correct.
Non. Toi, t'es
Mais
chill, moi, je suis
il
pas
peut
chill.
être insane si t'as des dupes.
Ok, mais je vais tank.
Il a son mode genre invincible.
Ah, bro.
Puis genre, quand il se fait hit, il donne
Ok,
4
c'est de la
pieds à
grosse
tous
merde.
ses alliés, genre.
Non, Mathé utilise mal.
C'est legit broken.
Bro, les
Oh,
pros.
shit.
C'est un
Yo,
tank,
c'est
bro.
C'est
Le
un
Esther
mini
Hero
job.
aussi, il est bon. Moi, j'ai
Non,
même
mais-
pas le Esther, j'ai le HD.
Genre, tu sais, quand tu uses le
Il
arcane
just pour le
thing,
damage.
Ah, puis tu...
Yeah. Le Esther est
mid-air,
stack.
tu switch de direction.
Le Esther
Genre,
est
le monde est
stack.
dégueu, genre.
Ouais, il stack
C'est
defense.
ça, il est meilleur.
Yeah, il est meilleur.
C'est toujours, bro, c'est toujours les
En
units
mettant
qui stack
live, c'est
defense,
defense.
yeah. C'est toujours ceux qui stack defense, ils sont better, dude. Genre, ça a toujours été
Ils
comme
bougent,
ça,
bougent.
je crois.
Il stack pas defense, c'est chaque fois qu'ils se font hit, il stack defense.
C'est ça, yeah. C'est ce genre de unit, comme... Non, Goku Black, il était... Non, Goku Black, il était pas comme ça. Goku Black, c'était quand tu faisais les attaques, il devenait plus fort, puis sa défense, ça monte. Goku Black, ça, c'était un fun unit, dude.
Easy le Universe Survival Goku, là, le God Goku, Blue Kyokan.
Ouais, lui...
Lui, il fait mal, non? Je te jure, il fait mal.
Mal, mais encore sa défense.
Sa défense,
Ouais,
ils l'ont augmenté un peu, là.
Mais c'est ça, le stack selon les
Ouais.
attaques aussi.
Mais il fait fucking mal,
Shit,
bro.
les gars.
Yeah. Dude. Oh non, dude. J'essaie de chercher un de ces genres generators,
Ils sont
genre
toujours pas
team
sortis, hein.
generator, parce que, bro.
Ouais, ils sont
Ok,
sortis
en
parce
fait,
que la porte était fermée.
Oh non, ils sont là,
Ils sont
ils sont
Ça,
là,
le
ils sont là.
Piccolo que j'ai dans ma team, tu l'as-tu?
L'autre, tu sais,
Le
je crois que
STA.
je crois que je l'ai actually throw.
Purple.
Je l'ai
Bro.
actually delete, man. Je veux pas
Il
que
est un tank, man.
je sais,
Oh,
dude,
ok,
il est
bro.
archi fucking good.
Pousse.
Tu
Genre,
jettes jamais des SSR,
man.
bro.
Non, mais je l'ai vu, j'étais comme, oh, un autre Piccolo, man. Moi, il y en a un seul que je veux. Là, je suis comme, wait. Chris, c'est
Bruh.
Mec.
Dude, j'achète pas. Mais c'est à cause que, genre, je me faisais harceler parce que je pouvais pas, genre,
Je peux
summon
même pas
ni
faire le
faire,
jump
genre,
d'ici à là.
you know, easy A ou some shit à cause que
Yo, mais
j'avais trop
achète
de
storage.
units.
Oh shit.
Chris, ça coûte des stones, bro.
Yeah, mais moi, il y a un point, je me suis dit, fuck off, je m'en fous. Puis j'ai juste acheté du storage, genre, comme un fou.
Legit, yeah.
Un
J'ai
genre
juste-
sniper.
Ça m'a archi,
Yeah, je
j'ai
vois.
archi sell, j'ai sell mon shit à cause de ça. Tu sais ce que je vais use? Je vais use les
Oh
les
non.
medals de Super Battle Road pour
Yeah, faut que tu fasses
monter
ça.
les character slots.
Oh, mais moi j'ai mis sur
Oh, Mathé,
Stamina,
Mathé.
ça. Je pense que c'était mieux de le mettre sur
Franchement,
Bouge.
Stamina.
Ah,
Bouge, j'ai
trop
ult,
tard.
j'ai ult.
Parce que, bro,
Ok.
storage, tu peux juste augmenter avec des stones. Stamina, tu peux pas augmenter avec des stones, bro.
Stamina, plus tu gagnes, plus ça monte, là. avant. Puis il
Yo.
donne plein de chicken every time, bro.
Bouge, on va se faire démolir.
Et
On va se faire
bro,
démolir.
turkey
Trust me,
legs.
Mathé.
Moi j'ai juste au tournament.
Oui.
Tournament
Well,
of...
Le
Mon
World
quatrième
Tournament, le nouveau
perso.
Piccolo, un
Ça
autre
va.
Piccolo. Piccolo, il est devenu la méta, je te dis.
C'est pas dans
J'avoue, en
Fortnite.
CN5, quand ils l'ont changé.
Il y a un
c'est
autre
bon.
Piccolo Extreme, genre. Il y a comme un active skill quand tu vas contre plus qu'un player. Bro. Puis il attaque all.
Pas
C'est
avoir
genre
du
Tournament
bon.
of Power, tu fais
Khaled,
juste.
Khaled,
on peut se poursuivre, hein.
Non, mais
grimpe ici,
moi,
grimpe
je
ici.
sens que le Worldwide, dude,
Maté, ta gueule.
ils vont boost. Ils vont faire quelque chose avec
Yo,
Gohan.
c'est
Parce que
c'est
tout le monde est
crazy.
tanné de Vegeta pis Goku. Ils vont
Yeah.
faire genre.
Les gens disent c'est Majin Saga. Mais je sais pas, on va
Shit, y'a
voir.
du monde ici.
Majin Saga.
Yeah, j'ai entendu.
Majin
Yo,
Saga.
t'as-tu les teasers qu'ils font?
Ok,
Non,
j'arrive,
j'ai
je
pas
vais
vu.
essayer
C'est
d'en
Mais
quoi
regarder.
ça?
même pas, ils postent sur Twitter, tu sais c'est quoi leur teaser? C'est, ils font des pâtisseries d'Okan Battle, pis tu dois guess c'est quoi.
gueule.
Je sais même pas, bro. Ils sont en train de mettre du fondu, en train de faire de la pâtisserie,
Attends,
pis
laisse-moi voir.
pis les gens sont en train de faire des théories de qu'est-ce qu'ils font, man.
Twitter, ça.
Genre des maisons en gingembre, genre.
Ok, man. Twitter, ça s'appelle encore Twitter, mais c'est un X.
Genre ils font de la pâtisserie, bro, c'est legit cringe.
Yeah, attends, je vais voir.
Je pense qu'ils m'ont vu.
Ça c'est juste dans le
Maté,
Japanese
pas le fou.
Twitter. Yeah. Check, je t'envoie le link.
J'ai envie de voir ça. Genre,
Bro, like, c'est quoi ce
ok, ben là,
teaser?
what the fuck?
Non mais ça se skip, il commence à faire des
Des
comme
units?
des
Genre, c'est
shapes, là,
des
ouais, check comme ça, genre, là, tu dois théoriser c'est quoi ça, bro.
C'est ça, man.
Je sais pas.
On dirait Broly, genre, non?
Check, oh, il y a des nuages, là. Bro, je te jure, man.
Oh,
God damn, Khaled.
Non, mais après, il commence à build une maison, man.
mais qu'est-ce que l'autre
Check,
triangle?
les gens, ça a l'air comme dans Tour, non?
Oh,
Mr. Popo.
oh my god, bro.
Quand ils vont
c'est
mettre
qui,
en haut à
là?
droite.
Popo!
Check en haut à droite.
Ça?
Là, check ça. C'est quoi?
Il me hit Maté pour 9.
C'est quoi ça, man?
Les gens disent c'est le Time Traveler Pod.
Ouais, ça, ouais, j'ai entendu. Ça,
Là, les gens disent cette Future Saga.
Yeah, mec, c'est-
Goku Black Uzamasu à l'air.
Oh, ben oui!
Mais il y en a qui disent que c'est la maison. Tu sais, les maisons Namek, là,
Ouais,
blanches.
Ah!
On dit que c'est ça aussi. Ça.
restart mon game.
Hmm.
Parce qu'ils l'ont pas fait. Check, ça a l'air comme une maison Namek, ça, non? Comme ça, avec les. Mais là, je sais pas. Là. Il y a des gens qui disent que ça, c'est les tuiles. Les tuiles du World Tournament.
Oh, ouais.
La reine.
Bruh.
Bro, comme. Yeah, je sais pas,
Oh,
bro.
man, good question. Fuck.
So cringe, bro.
Non, non, non. Juste ça. Oh,
C'est
damn.
pas called Brody, c'est du gazon, man.
Non, c'est pas Broly. Non, 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 c'est pas Broly. Mais c'est ça, c'est du gazon. Puis ça pourrait être le pod qu'ils mettent dessus. Ou bien ça pourrait être. Ah, c'est du Planète Namek. Yeah, ça
Yeah, je
pourrait
pense que
être
c'est
genre-
Planet Namek.
Ou bien ça pourrait être le pod. Non, ça pourrait être le pod sur du gazon, genre. Yeah, genre. Tu comprends?
Non, les gens disent c'est. Ah non, c'est comme les pods de Majin Buu. Check Majin Buu
Oh.
House.
Attends.
Google Majin Buu House.
Oh, genre, quand il a mis genre Satan. Je crois que c'était ça, hein. Oh, ça, oh, shit!
Mais je sais pas, c'est un peu, je sais pas.
Maté, je vais en manger.
Je sais pas.
Hmm,
Maté, ton jeu démarre.
Ouais,
good
t'as pas
question.
déjà mangé, man?
Ok, mais les
2 minutes,
Corées,
je
les
reviens,
Corées,
2
ça n'a
minutes.
aucun rapport. là.
Oh là là.
Mais tu sais, la tour de Mr. Popo, les gens disent que c'est ça aussi à cause des nuages,
Yeah.
puis ils l'ont mis sur un cylindre, genre. Parce que tu sais, c'est comme un fucking.
Parce qu'ils pourraient mettre Non, mais ils l'ont déjà mis. Le bout, check, tu sais,
C'est une hyperbolic
le-
chamber.
le LR bout, AGL.
Yeah, ils ont déjà.
Lui, il est fucking fort, bro.
Ouais, il fait du damage, mais.
Il- Oh non, mais il attaque all. Jesus Christ, il fait du 10
Sérieux?
millions, man.
Je l'ai juste usé once.
Bro, il est monstrueux, puis il déchire une shit, il attaque tout le monde, bro. Tu l'as
Yeah, mais le
juste...
problème, c'est Extreme, c'est un peu de la merde, Extreme.
Non, non, mais pour Tournament of Power, je crois qu'il est bon.
Non, World
Extreme.
Tournament, tout le monde use le Int Piccolo pour World Tournament.
Ah, ok, yeah, maybe.
Tu fais juste swipe up, puis ça tue tout le monde.
Ok,
Tu rentres dans une game, tu swipe up, ça tue tout le monde, tu go next.
C'est une good question, hein. Bro. Ils ont posé ça quand?
Je sais pas. Celui-là il est récent, celui-là c'est aujourd'hui.
Yeah.
L'autre c'est quelques jours. Là.
C'est pas comme si je comprenais quelque chose là, mais. Bro. Nuages. Je sais pas si c'est juste une déco pour les airs, genre. Je crois pas si. Je crois pas si c'est nécessairement le cylindre. Regarde, c'est genre un background déco, mais le grass pis ça, on peut le figure out de quoi.
Duo.
Ah,
On peut rien figure out. Fuck, man. To be continued. Fuck you. J'ai- Toi, t'es passé quoi, là?
Euh...
Genre, qu'est-ce qu'il nous faut?
Moi il me faut des... Ah, je sais pas. Moi il me faut... Les super, je suis tanné des super je veux des villains, you know?
Villains?
Regarde.
Moi,
C'est comme... C'est
mon.
rendu... Genre j'ai tellement beaucoup de super, genre comme... Je sais même pas qui choisir quand je fais une team.
T'as-tu le LR Cooler?
Non, je l'ai pas.
Moi, moi je l'ai, yo. Il fait fun en ma. Il fait fun en ma team, là. Parce qu'en plus, c'est un 200%. So, you know. Je take. Mieux d'être juste fucking bon le worldwide, man. Je veux pas un autre. Genre Vegito, Gojira, man. Ou Goku and Vegeta. Juste un peu d'originalité, you know? You know. Allez, moi je reviens une seconde.
Yo, Mathieu. T'as mis si les
t'inquiète.
étoiles filantes.
Quoi?
T'as mis si les étoiles filantes.
Non, il y a des nuages.
J'en ai vu deux, bro.
Ah,
Dehors?
Yeah.
C'était beau? T'as fait un wish? C'était quoi ton wish, Khaled?
fuck. Oh my god.
Oh my god, je suis down. Mathieu. Mathieu with the movement,
Check ça,
bro.
check ça, check ça.
Mathieu with the movement.
Oh shit.
Slide. Strafe. Oh.
Come on.
Faut qu'Akram pis Khaled font le truc.
Quoi? Ah.
C'est drôle à voir.
Quoi?
Le two-player Roblox obstacle course.
Attends, y a pas des nuages dehors, Khaled?
Imagine à
Oui, mais
4 joueurs, Mathieu.
c'est troué. Je peux fully
Ah.
nuager.
Imagine le rope shit à 4 joueurs.
Non.
Ça serait crazy. Un gars tombe, tout le monde est dead.
Être Khaled à 1h du matin.
Mhm.
Je vais prendre le car puis je vais venir.
Oh, why at 1 a.m.?
C'est comme. Yo, le save va déjà se lever. Mathieu, c'est comme ça quand tu montes Mount Everest. Tout le monde est attaché.
Ok. Hey, tu slip pas comme un dommage.
Il y a pas du lag, il y a pas du input delay.
Alright,
Comme.
N'importe où.
Non, le ship. On veut chill.
Tu drops comme une merde, man.
Non!
Tu vas à 120 Genre, t'es même pas max speed.
Tu max glide, ok?
Tu ralentis.
Khaled, apparemment aujourd'hui c'était un crazy Bleach episode. Mais tu slack, Khaled, tu slack.
De quoi je slack?
Tu slack.
Moi je
Pas
suis
regarder
là.
Bleach.
Je t'ai vu à 5h du matin, t'étais avec qui? Maxime?
Non.
Je sais pas, t'étais dans l'autre serveur là.
On est 4, on est assez pour faire un colonist.
Ok, go.
Yo, Khaled, quand t'as legit tout ruiné quand t'as quitté, hein.
Ah ouais?
Le loup, il a juste. Le
Ouais.
AI, il prend pas de territoire.
Oh, aïe aïe
C'est le
aïe.
loup, il a juste. Il a juste. Comme. Moi, je pouvais pas avancer parce que tu me bloquais. Mais genre, le loup, il est allé. Il a pris la moitié de la. Shit, bro. Puis il a gagné à cause de ça. Parce qu'il y avait le longest road. Il se faisait du mad money.
Ah, tu veux drop où? On a drop là. Et on va essayer. Go. Ah, bien, attends. On va juste essayer, bro. Under.
Yeah, yeah. Ok, pourquoi t'as pas pris mon shit?
Je l'ai pris. De quoi je l'ai pas pris? Oh shit, il y a du monde, il y a du monde, il y a du monde. Ils sont.
Ton zipline. Ils sont dans la maison.
Qui est hype
Peut-être
pour l'école.
dip.
Oh
So
shit.
hyped.
Tu as ta carte puce, Khaled?
Non, je viens pas commander, bro.
Bro, ça
Allez,
stretch, yo, il stretch l'image.
ah ouais?
Comme si tu vas dans McGill
Oh, Mati,
Photo Live, puis tu vois
sur le toit, sur le
40
toit, sur le toit. Mati, sur le toit,
comme,
sur le toit.
Ouais.
comme si tu vas
Oh shit.
tu vas dans le site McGill Live, puis tu check ta photo, il est comme stretch. Elle va être comme ça sur la carte.
Il cracked.
Yeah, cracked, bro.
Yo,
Oh my god,
lis le
revenant,
chat,
il y
ça
a un
dit
alt.
anime.
Revenant, il y a un alt.
Ok, bro, c'est juste 75 de shield. Ah, moi je drop.
Et Mati, j'ai plus d'ammo, fait qu'il va falloir que tu manages, hein.
Yo, j'ai plus de ammo.
Oh my god. Oh merde. You know team, you know team, you know team. Bouge, 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 bouge. Juste y-toi, y-toi, y-toi. Il y a des solides polis, il y a des solides polis.
Bro, j'allais
Bouge, je t'ai dit.
Bing chilling.
Man. Mati,
Puis
oh,
Khaled,
on
ça,
me.
ça avance le rank up.
Non, non, j'ai pas rank. J'ai même pas ouvert le game.
Ton bot, il marche
Confié.
pas.
Non, je l'ai juste pas ouvert.
Écoute, t'es toujours online alors, man.
Allumé.
Comme après, t'es comme, oh, je quitte, je joue pas en coloniste. Puis t'es online dans toute l'année.
Non, non, j'ai quitté. J'ai acheté mon ordi.
Là, t'étais online.
Ouais, c'est pour ça que t'es en train de send des shit dans le chat.
Ah, ok, je suis sur mon phone, je suis sur mon phone.
Oh, capeur.
Oh, est-ce qu'ils peuvent dip?
Lol, bro. Ok, mais Mati, tu sais, tu peux craft, hein. Tu peux craft le code. So, tu peux aller à un endroit et tu craft.
Mais tu peux pas toujours la craft, des fois tu peux pas.
Non, tu peux.
Oh, please fight avec un autre team, bro.
Allez, tu montes, tu vas pick up et tu dip. Mati, t'as la zone. Tu peux
T'inquiète.
même pas fight
J'ai
in-zone.
utilisé la zone
La
à
zone
mon
était mal.
avantage.
La zone live était
Non,
mal, Mati. Oui, non, ils l'ont augmenté. Ils l'ont
c'est vrai.
augmenté de beaucoup, oui. À ta droite, à ta droite. Mati, est-ce que t'as pick up?
Ça l'a time out
Nice.
quand je. C'est quoi les choses?
T'es fait
bro?
bully, bro. T'es fait bully. Je te dis, t'aurais pu que t'es juste craft.
Moi, je dis qu'on va live dehors checker les étoiles.
Non, bro.
Il
Ah, ça
pleut un
sert en
tout petit
dehors.
peu.
Tellement de moustiques. C'est insane.
Non, mais il pleut un tout petit peu là.
Yeah, mais c'est le perfect weather pour les moustiques.
C'est parti ça.
Bro. Euh,
J'essaie.
Bookie, maybe.
J'essaie, c'est ça que j'allais dire.
Yeah, il peut dans un de mes serveurs. Regarde. Bookie. Beranda. Attends, mais tout commence.
Quoi?
Est-ce que c'est en même temps que nous?
C'est en même temps que quoi?
Est-ce que c'est en même temps que nous que tu recommences quoi?
Non. Personne a dit que t'as dit que c'est le 28.
Non, c'est le 30.
Ok, le 30, ma pas. Oh, moi, c'est le 4.
4 septembre?
Ouais.
Yeah, je crois à l'Université de Montréal aussi.
Mais c'est weird que vous, c'est différent.
Ah, guess on finit plus tôt. Hein. Ça va
Ah,
take care, tu vois.
maybe.
Tu vois, si j'ai plus de break que 5 jours.
Non.
Maté, bouge, 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 bouge. Oh, t'es down.
Oh, mon controller, you fucking. Ok, même si tu me respawns, je peux pas bouger, je sais pas pourquoi.
Man, I don't care, bro. On va juste secure d'ici. C'est la hesse.
Tu vas me use comme bait.
Oh, le bunker, c'est plus comme avant. Et je dis live, les pubs sont broken. Sont actually broken, les pubs. Je sais, personne ne land de l'autre côté.
Ok, t'es dans le milieu du fucking désert, man.
Non, mais genre, I mean là.
Comment tu sais?
Parce que je vois tout est fermé, rien n'est loot. Oh, ça vient d'ouvrir.
Wow. Perfect. Puis toi, t'es en train de courir.
Non, j'étais pas, juste get high ground. J'essaie de get high, tu vois.
Mec, high ground, moi. T'es pas dans le fucking Fortnite.
Maté, high ground, c'est quelque chose.
Est-ce que tu m'as laissé un gun au moins?
J'ai rien pris, y'avait pas de gun. Check, moi. Check. Bro.
Je les entends.
Yeah, moi aussi. Ils sont devant
Non, mais
toi,
genre,
genre.
proche de moi.
Yeah, ils sont devant toi, je t'ai dit. Oh shit. Oh shit, je suis tombé. Oh, je suis tombé. Mati, bouge.
Moi, je bouge. Ah, ils s'en viennent. Pourchasse.
Attends, on va voir s'il jump, je les backstab.
Good luck. Pourquoi ils me pourchassent? Un
On
peu,
reste
j'étais
toi.
jumpé. Oui.
Attends, mine-là,
Tiens,
mine-là.
je vais prendre le jump tower, moi. On dip, bro. Fuck this
Non.
shit. S'il me shoot mid-air, je quitte le jeu live. Oh my god. No way Face Kitchen m'a tué, man. Yo, mais t'étais direct derrière eux.
Tu veux que je les shoot?
Pourquoi t'es
Ah,
sur un gangbang?
je suis vibe, je suis vibe. Attends, juste qu'ils prennent le jump tower ou qu'est-ce que. Oh. Encore là. Bon,
Hey,
j'ai aucun
j'avais pas
scope.
trop.
C'est dégueulasse, man. Jouer sans scope, c'est dégueulasse. Genre, actually, genre, même un times one qui fait absolument rien, c'est mieux que juste. Check, bro. Ton space, il est pris par de la merde.
Ouais.
Ta guess, ils ont bouge. Ils ont pas. T'avais du loot? Oh, wow. What's your
Ouais, ils ont
name?
mis.
Hmm. Bro, t'as actually de la merde. Ah, ping le closest.
Mais si ma manette veut bien marcher.
Ouais, marche pas.
Je sais pas,
Ouais,
man.
je l'ai vu, bro. Je vais tuer avec la zone. Fait que va falloir que tu bouge.
Ok, je peux. Ouh. Yo, t'as pas dit que ça fait mal?
Non, ça c'est le premier, c'est chill. Le deuxième fait du mad damage, bro, c'est insane. Ok, bro, on passe par là, on passe par là. Va à droite, va à droite. Tu vas retourner les voir.
Ah, j'ai get mon crazy loot.
Oh, t'avais rien.
Ah, je vois
Oh,
quelqu'un.
shit. Dis-moi à droite, dis-moi à droite. Moi, je te
On
dis
est
là.
dans son. On va dans le tunnel.
Qu'est-ce que je l'ai dit, Maté?
Quoi? Ah,
Ouais,
Face
oui,
Kitchen, il s'est fait tuer, let's go.
comment tu sais?
J'ai vu dans le chat. Ah, t'es sérieux, y'en a là.
Euh.
Je sais pas, elle est direct devant nous.
Ok, bro, bouge. Qu'est-ce que tu fais? C'est pas de fight, Maté. Faut que je forme le XP, moi. Genre, tu sais, ranked, get the kills, c'est useless, bro.
Ah ouais.
Yeah. Ah, un hemlock. I guess he
T'as
used.
rien entendu. Il y avait quelqu'un dans le village.
Pas là, ok. Ok, bro, on bouge avec la zone. Man, on squad, bro. Je te jure, ce jeu, c'est devenu de la merde. Avant les squads, ça disparaissait
Et là.
real quick.
Oh my god.
Man, est-ce qu'il y a un bon gun?
Putain, ils ont buff le charge rifle.
Non, ils l'ont nerf. Il est devenu dégueulasse.
Wow,
Non, mais
yike!
tu comprends?
Ah, y'a plus le Ray. Shit.
Arrête, on move up north et on prend le jump
Ah.
tower.
Au nord, tu peux parler avec Khaled. Je sais pas
Non,
comment
ok,
dire.
mais c'est west, ok, mais tu comprends ce que je veux dire, bro, c'est devant.
Non. Quand tu me dis nord, moi c'est nord.
Oh, oh, ce spot, bro. Tellement de souvenirs.
Je vois.
Bro, en ranked, je me rappelle, on souffrait ici. Quand le cercle est close vers
Ah,
ici.
la piste de décollage.
Oh, mais celle-là elle va faire du damage, hein.
J'ai rien entendu.
Et calme ton dinosaure, là.
Oh, matériel de merde.
Non, il y avait une R99, bro. C'était venu loot dans le village, à place de rester sur les bords. Oh,
Ah,
golden. C'est quoi, c'est...
c'est un heavy mag.
Oh, heavy to use.
Ouais.
Oh, on est posé, bro.
On check high ground c'est là.
C'est quoi le truc là-bas, là?
Sur le
Bro.
dragon.
Non, il y a un purple saigné. J'ai envie de savoir. Vas-y. Hum.
Je pense qu'il y a du monde genre derrière nous. Ils se fight là-bas.
Oh. Ah, moi, je vais lutte un peu. Essayer de trouver des scopes parce que...
Ah.
Mec, j'ai aucun good mag. C'est insane. Oh, je vais me faire soulever en fight. Si je me des balles.
Oh non.
Oh, mec. Oh, ça me voit, ça me shoot.
J'allais zipline vers eux, t'es sérieux.
Oh merde, je suis tombé du mauvais côté. Oh, je suis tombé du mauvais côté.
Ouh.
Son.
Sur le high ground.
Ah, je savais high ground, ça existait pas, maté.
Non mais je te dis. Je pense qu'ils savent qu'on est là.
Yeah. Reste dans les showers. J'ai un ult. Mec, j'ai...
Non.
Bro, maté.
Je voulais pop mon sniper.
Bro, j'ai 10 damage, c'est insane.
Que tu vois le laser?
Oui, maté. Il est...
Est-ce que tu
il est un
penses
peu
que eux
beaucoup
ils le voient?
évident. Oui, il le voit, hein, tu le vois.
Moi je le vois pas.
Et
Ils sont
moi,
en
je te
train de nous
dis...
chercher.
Oh, maté. T'es hit, j'espère.
Mais oui. Yo, I don't miss a single shot.
Allez, viens, viens. Climb comme le monde normal.
Quoi?
Oh merde. Aïe, aïe, aïe. Il y a Octane, bro, avec ses fou moves, je viens de le voir, il est en train de. Octane,
Si je pointe le laser vers le haut, est-ce qu'il nous voit?
man. I don't know, bro. C'est
C'est un
tellement bizarre
beacon.
parce que. Parce que le gun, genre, il suit pas le motion. Man, on bouge avec la zone, mais on va se faire manger. Arrête, on va là. Arrête.
Ok. C'est...
Oh.
Oh, mets ton smoke.
Arrête, arrête, Jolt.
Cette maison est même pas dans la zone.
Je suis down.
Bye bye Khaled. Ils sont en
Good
train de
job.
camp les pas.
C'est genre,
On peut pas jouer.
placement donne plus de points que les kills. Ready up.
Ah, chill.
On est SoundCloud, bro.
Ok.
Come on, big dude.
Ah yo, devine qu'est-ce que j'ai vu au gym aujourd'hui.
Oh,
Fucking Sorab.
ta gueule.
Un multisport avec Ray Sean.
Ray
J'ai
Sean.
l'impression que le gars il a fucking maigri.
Qui est? Ray Sean?
Sorab. Non, Sorab.
Ah.
Ray Sean il était juste skinny.
Non, il était devenu fat, bro.
Ah ouais?
Tu vois, quand il portait ses baggy clothes, man. Tu l'as jamais vu?
Ah, il était still skinny. Mais ça, c'est une illusion.
Non, mais baggy clothes, il était fat. Genre, tu vois son belly, bro, il a un sale beer belly.
C'est 8 packs. Mais en tout cas, Sorab il a fucking maigri. J'étais choqué.
Qu'est-ce que tu lui as dit?
Rien, juste dit what's up. Après, il est allé faire ses shit avec Ray Sean.
Tu vois Ray Sean souvent?
Non. Pendant genre, pendant comme plusieurs mois, il venait
Non,
pas.
mais il allait à Multi.
Il allait à BuzzFeed peut-être.
Non, il allait à BuzzFeed.
Ok.
Oh, bro, c'est quoi ce malade 2 secondes, bro?
C'est quoi?
J'ai mis malade, c'était 2 secondes.
Ouais,
Oh,
j'ai entendu ça.
oh merde, yo, j'ai été scan. Yo,
Ok,
mon été.
mais ça le scanne toute la map, bro, chill.
Non.
Oui, t'es pas le seul à avoir été scan.
Non.
C'était toute la map.
Red, ça dit j'ai appear, bro. À 200 mètres.